Welcome to Aligned to Impact, the podcast where conscious leadership meets bold entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Summer Huntington, and each week we dive deep with founders, innovators, and thought leaders who are rewriting the rules of business from the inside out. Here we talk mindset, brand, content, culture, the real stuff behind building a legacy-driven business that doesn't burn you out. No filters, no fluff, just real conversations that inspire aligned action and intentional impact. If you're a visionary leader ready to create with purpose, grow with integrity, and lead with your heart, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Yes, or encompassing it all. Or funny people who say like, "Oh, how long do you meditate or how long do you practice?" I mean, I have to really say from my teachers, it's when we wake up in the morning and then when we close our eyes. And I'm a bit like a farmer. I hit the pillow and, I suppose it continues in the dream time, but I'm like, put out. But it's really when we're all day long is our meditation. And I think movement meditation gives us that template in a microcosm.
Big warm welcome to Shiva Ray. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Shiva.
Oh, thank you, Summer, for gathering us together.
Absolutely. So Shiva has done so many things. She's been a leader in our industry for many years. She has so many different outlets and different bodies of work that she's been exploring. She really holds up the tradition so well in all of her containers. My first question for you, Shiva, you're leading a global community through Pranavinyasa and the Samrudra Global School for Living Yoga. What is your current focus in this season of your work, and what feels most alive for you right now?
Thank you. I think that's a very powerful question because I'm in my second Saturn return and I'm really seeing how the circles, and I'm sure we've in our conversation, it's one of the most wonderful things to see is how our seed desires, how for me, my background in world arts and cultures is kind of an unusual entryway into supporting embodiment and movement meditation in the world. So I'm currently focused on the power of rhythm and in rhythmic vinyasa and in bringing people together, whether it's in large scale or smaller scales, and actually using rhythmic methods such as drumming with rhythm sticks that's really based upon this amazing temple art form called Chenda, which comes from Southern Kerala where my teachers are. So it's a mission of both bringing women in rhythm together in Kerala and in Rishikesh next year. We're trying to sponsor 1,000 rhythm sticks, particularly for women and children and families to really bring the power of rhythm, yoga, meditation, in activating communities, and particularly just how high stress is all around the world, particularly for children. So working also with kids and women who are facing any type of health challenge. It's just been an amazing journey to kind of return to the power of world arts and cultures, my background in dance movement therapy, and in this time where people are really understanding the somatic aspect of yoga, but that is actually ancient and connected not just to movement, but people are so much more open to the power of sound healing, music, how yoga and dance and our shared passion, martial arts, which people often misunderstand as a fighting system. It's really a total embodiment system. So there's pilgrimages that are planned, there's our online community, there's bringing things out into the world that can serve people, whether it's in 1 minute or 10 minutes. All the mediums that we use, Summer, live and, in the quantum virtual field. So trying to be a force for positive change.
I feel that. And every time I see you, Shiva, on your Instagram, you are doing this rhythmic dancing and you're pounding with your feet. And I want to
Yeah.
speak to kind of the healing modality kind of more from like a neuroscience level, if you want
Yes.
to geek out on it a bit, like
I like that.
the rhythm and the frequency shifts from sound and from the vibrational aspect of grounding your feet. If you want to share a little bit of the, the neuroscience of that, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, I wrote my master's thesis in 1997 on Tantra and somatics being practices of embodiment. And the first part of that was really a short history of disembodiment over the last several thousand years. And that's what astounded me so much when we look at the history of dance and movement meditation, is that we really have had periods where dance has been illegal, long periods, like thousands of years. If we go from, the time when Constantinople made dance reduced down to a procession, in the 14th century and so 4th century, and to think that any inhibition we have towards the power of movement and particularly of reconnecting our body to the earth, it's what we're innately born with. We don't understand why we're born with this innate power to respond to movement and rhythm. And it's because it's just a superfood. Movement changes our brain. All of the science of connecting our bones and our electromagnetic field with the earth, just like all mammals do. So for me, it's really about supporting people's understanding of their innate embodied intelligence before words. And so I feel that, the powers of movement that we understand with exercise, when we bring it into meditation, we're getting both the neuroscience, to say neuroplasticity, that, any movement can grow new possibilities, but also that, movement supports our emotional regulation, particularly by transforming complex feelings that we can't really put into words. So that's, to me, has been my, lifelong dedication really to the nonverbal power of movement meditation to access deeper feelings, states of consciousness, and collectively the feeling that we're all together, even though we may come from different backgrounds and different points of view. Yoga is this unifying force that really we can see as our global heritage, not just from all of the root traditions in India, but that all of our ancestors had some way through movement to recalibrate ourselves and recalibrate our community. The neuroscience of that is super fascinating. We could go more, for sure, into that.
Well, I really love that you brought up the group piece, because I think there's a power
Yes.
and a frequency when you're dancing in community. You get the
Yes.
electromagnetic field of everyone else dancing with you, and it's so
Yes.
healing and nourishing for the nervous system.
Yes. And I think we underestimate the power of, whether it's virtual or, you know, together, of course, in breathing and rhythm, syncopating together. This is what we see really unites what we find around the world in movement meditation, is the power of syncopation, what this does to our brain waves and our heart rhythm, what this does in the power of community to actually move from all of the pressures of the I and to feel the field of belonging that we as social creatures, mammals, we need that. So I think a yoga class is really not just a kind of intimacy. Often I ask people, like, do you breathe with your family together in unison for an hour or an hour and a half? And we're like, wow, I don't know if I've been, that intimate even with my own family members. Of course, moving, dancing, doing yoga together creates that intimacy of breath. And so I think that's a very, very powerful experience that we are having together.
Yeah. And what you're speaking of reminds me of a book that you wrote on was it Tending the Heart Fire with the heart
Yes.
coherence, where you go into the science of
Hmm.
the heart coherence. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about that book? Because I feel like I bought that book probably
Yeah.
8 years ago, and it's just a
Yeah.
beautiful book, just really explaining the importance of tending the heart fire and the electromagnetic,
Yes.
frequency of the heart. Um,
Yes. I think what becomes so interesting is, of course, this was 10 years ago, and now people are more fluent in some of the languaging that, particularly for me, it's the Heart Math Institute in Northern California that really gave a language to the science that they were seeing, which isn't that difficult to see when we put, electrodes on our brain and we measure our heart rhythm. We can actually see when we're in states of coherence and measure through all of these physiological, baselines, our blood pressure, uh, you know, changes in our immune system when we are in such a state of coherence. And I think that what is fascinating is the part that we can feel when we're together, whether the electromagnetic field that's extending beyond our body, if we're in connection and relationship, and the fact that that syncopation can be embodied and experienced and was by our ancestors. When we think of how did they know, well, not how did they know, the fact that they knew from an embodied experience that the actual sensation in our heart region is so much like the sun in the center of our solar system, and it becomes grafted into the fire altar that our ancestors, gathered around. And we can see that that fire keeping is really the origins of meditation and of movement meditation. And I was just astounded of how long we've been able to tend fire. You know, I know it's going to sound crazy, but 2 million years. The archaeology shows that we were able to capture fire, and just how that centering when we gaze upon a fire and the centrality of the fire altar in yogic culture that then connects us with our global ancestral culture brings us to then the sensation and uniqueness of our heart organ to have through the cardiac cells this electrical charge which is so much greater than any other organs and produces this sensation of being heart centered or warm hearted, and that we can feel it like increasing like a sun, and we can feel it extending beyond our body, and we can see it in each other. And so it becomes a way of tending to emotional regulation with perhaps a metaphor that taps into not just our nervous system, but why the centrality, going to India now over 30 years, trying to go twice a year and really spend time in this fire keeping that is unbroken, to go to temples where the fire, the homa, is being lit by a flame that's been kept for 800 years, or to sponsor one of these flames in a temple and to see it there, protected. We have to also stay connected to this core power, this mystery, this light we see in each other's eyes, that, this miracle that we are fire. We are energetic souls. And so it's a visual book that tried to bring together very rich and deep understandings, not only, of course, kind of from the archaeological record and this understanding of the mystic heart. I grew up with my grandmother's image of Jesus and the flaming heart, and that is so rich in all of the world's cultures, but that the science now not only supports that, but we can see it's central to yoga it's central in Kalaripayat, the martial art form that I study. We touch the earth, we touch the place where the candles, the puja, has been activated in the entire space before we begin to move. So it's this kind of ritual of getting to who's the core of who we are. And like a firekeeper, it's so easy. There's so much grief from the confusion and changes in the world, um, you know, that our heart can become dim, just like a fire. It can become totally agitated and out of control by the stresses of the world. So we are our own fire keepers. We also spark each other, and yoga is such a profound, rich and diverse tradition for connecting us to the fire of consciousness.
I feel like all of the pieces from reading and looking at the pictures in that book just came together so beautifully in the way that you
Oh,
described that.
good.
I really appreciate you just pulling that together and sharing from your heart. And I think the words we use, like when someone says you're so radiant, like Shiva, you're so radiant and you're glowing and you're obviously tending your heart
Oh,
fire often. All right. So
well, yeah. I mean, for me, I feel yoga brings us to our tenderness, our just naturalness. So a lot of the things that are in the book about sahaja, for instance, our innate intelligence, or living in harmony with the flow of life, or, about prana vinyasa, living with the pulse of life. This journey for me in the book was also being able to show people the origins of namaskar. We hear of Surya Namaskar, but what happened to Chandra Namaskar? And for us to know that Namaskar is a movement meditation that's in many different embodied art forms in India. So it was super rich, and I'm continuing to unfold from those really potent unfoldings that are still there as questions for me. Like I still think we don't have a great, history of movement meditation book. So it's those glimpses of the power of embodied arts that I'm still so super inspired by.
I just want to hold on to that embodied arts because I think a lot of
Yeah,
yoga teachers that I work with, like we identify as like movement coaches, flow artists, and so
right.
we truly do have a movement practice through like a meditation practice through movement and embodiment. And I think it's
Yes,
important to
yes,
note that there are different types of meditation. There's seated and there's movement meditation.
yes, yes. Or encompassing it all. Or funny people who say like, "Oh, how long do you meditate?" or "How long do you practice?" I mean, I have to really say from my teachers, it's when we wake up in the morning and then when we close our eyes. And I'm a bit like a farmer. I hit the pillow and, I suppose it continues in the dream time, but I'm like, you know, put out. But it's really when we're all day long is our meditation. And I think movement meditation gives us that template in a microcosm, that it's really the flow of consciousness, embodying the flow of consciousness.
Absolutely. Over the years, your path has woven together Vinyasa, Tantra, Ayurveda, and I want to pronounce this correctly. Kalari, and it starts with a P. Can you pronounce that for us?
Kalaripayattu,
Thank
yes.
you. Thank you. So definitely want to dive into that and world dance. What has
Yes.
guided your integration of these diverse lineages and practices?
Yeah, thank you. Well, because my father gave me my name, I kind of came into yoga from my own motivation. Um, my parents weren't yoga practitioners, but they did love the image of Shiva Nataraja. And so it's a kind of interesting thing to me that I became interested in, where yoga and you could say dance meet or integrate. And I think that whole process really began strangely not in India, but in Africa. And that, I found one class when I was in high school in Memphis, Tennessee, and it really inspired me. It's really actually a meditation class and very, very kind of There's just two classes, that class and another asana class in the entire city. And so I really wanted to go to India in a gap year between high school and college. And for me, the fact that I couldn't go because Indira Gandhi had just been shot and assassinated, so it was just turmoil. So I went to Kenya to do volunteer work, and that's where I started to really be in self-practice and became a member of a women's dance troupe and really started to feel, for instance, things like we consider cat's breath. I'm like, wait a minute, this is part of African dance, whether you go east or west, right? And so I went back and I found this program called the World Arts and Cultures Program. And that's where I first experienced Kalaripayattu. It was a brilliant scholar named Philip Zerilli. I was 19 as a freshman. And I saw something and it just activated something deep within me. I'm sure you've had this experience, Summer, in your journey. It took me, even from after becoming a mother, it took me 20 years to actually go back and start this practice. Actually, it's not 20 years, less. I've been now practicing for 20 years, and to find such an amazing form that really brings yoga and Ayurveda into this embodied training in a sacred place where you really have to be initiated to practice Kalaripayat. It's for children to all ages, we have beautiful elders who are practicing in our Kalari, and it's considered to be one of the oldest martial art forms in the world. So at that same time, I had begun to be one of the few students in Los Angeles studying Ashtanga Vinyasa. Yoga Works had just opened, and Mati Ezrati was teaching Ashtanga, and I was myself and one other student, two of us in the class. And when I came back from a 2-year journey abroad, where I lived and went back and studied in Ghana, the School of Music and Dance, and then went and studied at Delhi University, and that's really where I became more exposed to Indian classical dance and really the power of Tantra and Bhakti as really the roots, the Adivasa, the indigenous roots from which yoga emerges. So when I came back, everything had kind of lit on fire. The Ashtanga room was full. This is now 1989, and I went into a yoga teacher training because I felt that yoga was really this front line to address the disembodiment that I was seeing, and we were studying just the effects of disembodiment, of only living from the perception of, we would say, our humkar, our outer mind. There's this richness, this illiteracy that of our inner experience that I could see even in becoming a yoga teacher and that time in 1990. And so it became a kind of contrast, really, Summer, because it was a time where yoga was being accepted as long as it was a physical fitness system. So Ashtanga was very fascinating to people because it was so energetic. At the same time, I was studying in all of the Krishnamacharya lineage, but I was having this parallel journey of studying with so many master artists from root traditions in the African diaspora. I went to the Jamaica School of Dance. I continued to do research in India. And I started to actually just have a awakening in my cellular body from all of these other forms that I was devoted to at the same time that I was learning yoga. And all of this was now happening inside the alchemy of my embodied experience. And so once, I've lived in East and West Africa for 3.5 years, that transmission of the pulse of life, that relationship of, the deep relationship in ceremony, so many all-night ceremonies in simple movement. I started to look for this as well in India, and I have now been part of so many amazing rituals that involve trance movement in India. I've been in so many temples now with the chenda, the temple arts that drumming arts that I study, that I'm now also drumming in temples. And so it's kind of like there's a whole universe that I felt that people were really not aware of in the roots of yoga. And so prana vinyasa really evolved very slowly, and I can say somewhat painfully, in that I could no longer just hold an asana, and I could no longer just do the same sequence. Not because out of a rebellion, but something was branching in Krishnamacharya's teachings about the latter part of his life, about really being in the season that each person uniquely they need for their constitution. Prana Vinyasa really developed as a way for people to connect to their life force as the source of movement, connect with their breath as the source of movement, and to create, now it's evolved over, I can't believe it, 30 years, as a roots and evolution system for movement meditation as self-realization and life regeneration. So we have now 54 different namaskars that have evolved from Surya and Chandra Namaskar to connect people to, so many aspects of, the wheel of the year, the season of the year. So for instance, it's summer right now. We're in the fluid power pathways. So it's based upon the elemental body. And we study a lot of traditional texts that are sometimes left out of a kind of normal, how should we say, vinyasa education. We really try and study from the tantric corpus, so we see such an appreciation of the sacredness, such a body positive, movement positive worldview. So yeah, we're humbled to be part of the evolution of yoga, and I'm always bringing people on pilgrimage, not just to India, but we're particularly in my work with women, we go to some of the oldest places for the goddess. Like we're going to Malta for the equinox. It's the oldest standing temple in the world, and it's dedicated to Great Mother. We go to India for Navaratri during the 10 days for the goddess. And so, Samudra Global School of Living Yoga is based upon our people being able to feel the full spectrum of their life, and to feel that to be a student or a practitioner or a teacher is to allow the flow of yoga to integrate all of the different aspects of your path to become the tree that you're meant to be.
Wow. Well,
I'm sorry, I have these storytelling ancestors. So you give
no,
us a question, we go around, we try and collect all the bits, and we come back.
yeah, and I wanted to actually just dive into Prana Vinyasa. And firstly, I'm a little old school. I had like DVDs back in 20 years ago
Yeah,
when you were doing like the flow with the waves, and you were like Soulful
yes,
Shiva,
yes.
California girl Shiva. And I want to dive into how you define Prana Vinyasa and how does it differ from other vinyasa-based practices.
Yeah, I think we've kind of talked about it a little bit. We would say prana vinyasa is a full spectrum roots and evolution movement meditation system for living in harmony with the pulse of life, with the seasons of life, with your life force, to balance the sacred fire of who we are, and to be in service to the collective. So Yeah.
I just mean more from like a movement perspective.
Ah,
Just
movement
so like
perspective. So the
are people,
main difference is this. In every asana, we are connecting to the pulse of life. So if you take something as simple as lunge, like a simple lunge, rather than holding the lunge, we will be connecting to, they're described as five movements of prana, but for instance, connecting to samana vayu, and then feeling that energy expand in all directions in that asana as Vyana Vayu. And so the underlying technique is a three-part vinyasa where we're connecting to the pulsation within every asana. We're connecting how the body itself becomes the teacher and can teach the energetic alignment, whether it's through our arms, our legs, or our torso, and also rhythmic vinyasa, how two asanas, the movement between each other, which I think really is Krishnamacharya's legacy to bring movement between asanas. You don't see it so much in Ashtanga and Iyengar, but in the way that Desikachar taught. So that then the main thing is that people experience, for instance, in our online school, a different namaskar every week. So it's like following through the seasons. Like right now, as I said, we're in the water pathways, so that each class feels like a complete elemental journey, but very specific to the day of the week, the moon, the season, and giving people mainly the somatic permission in every class to be either more solar or more lunar, not for the whole class, but literally as the class unfolds. So we don't classify it as beginner or intermediate, more by energetics, if that makes sense.
yeah.
So I think the main difference when people come to a prana vinyasa class is they don't feel like they're being instructed, but they're feeling like they're being guided from within. And so it's yeah, movement pulsation centric journey.
Beautiful. Thank you for that breakdown because I think visually
Yeah,
for me as like a kinesthetic learner, I want to like visualize what does it feel like? And even just the
right.
way you describe it, like I can feel things shift somatically in my body from the way that you describe the pulsation. So thanks for
Yeah.
going into that a little bit.
Hmm.
So you often speak about yoga as a way of living. You're so embodied in it. What are some of your favorite daily rituals or practices that help you embody this philosophy?
Yeah. Well, coming back to the heart fire, I really think that the most important practice that has transformed me the most, that I think I received from my Satguru, who's the hugging saint, Amaji. I received my mantra from her when I was still a teenager. And it's really to see the light in each person, like I'm looking at your eyes, and to extend respect to each and every being. I feel like as teachers, I think maybe because I was, of course, I had so many great teachers, but it was kind of an authoritarian time of teachers kind of talking down to teachers. There was unfortunately a lot of abuse. Nothing to laugh about. But I mean that for me, that like, like we, from that, I think there's now a more compassionate centered, heart centered emphasis on living yoga, not just self-centered. You know, the product of that we've have a practice that helps us. You know, we don't have to say emotional regulation all the time. You know, it comes into our naturalness. Then to know that each being you meet, we're just part of this ripple effect that's going on all through the day, and particularly as gets more and more intense. I really do feel like we're kind of like secret ninjas, not better than anybody, but just by being a practitioner, it's our duty, wherever we are, to look at what's going on and try and be of service. If that means being calmer, okay. If it means stepping forward, using our voice, using our actions to be guardians, to be protectors, to speak out, then that's part of living yoga too. So for me, it's really this fire keeping of being responsible for my own stress, and as much as possible from within myself, within my home. We do a lot of just the three shantis that we chant at the end of class. You know, we think of peace within as if we can have the ritual of every day trying to release the unnecessary conflict within ourselves. The unnecessary conflict. And then the same in the second shanti is let us release all the unnecessary conflict between each other. There's so much that we just project onto the world, each other. And same in the world, right? We pray from our own heart first. And then what remains is the necessary conflict. And that means the things that we do need to bring wisdom and action to. And I think yoga is a great system of authenticity in that way, right? We are the ones experiencing the fruits of the practice. And also, when we're not practicing, we can see, wow, it's so easy to become bitter in the world today. So easy to become disillusioned. So easy to become disappointed, right? And at the same time, the power of nature, the power of our creature love, it is greater than these agitations. So that's our little motto, is our meditation is deeper and stronger than these agitations and fragmentations.
Yeah, I think.
And to live that, to try and live that. Woo!
Yeah, releasing the unnecessary agitations, releasing the unnecessary suffering within ourselves and then our unnecessary suffering with others. It's so simple when you speak about it, and it is a practice, like daily practices in every interaction, in how you keep your home, how you keep your family.
Well, to me, it's the path that's helped me is hearing these great saints and walking in their footsteps, like in Varanasi, where Kabir, he's such a amazing saint. He just remained a little tailor. When I mean, like these little shops he was a great soul, but his shop was very tiny. And, he's always saying, ah, oh friend, let our arrogance go. None of us have gone far. Like this thing of the friend, befriending ourselves. That's what I really mean about the unnecessary conflict, the unnecessary pressures. Also being a leader in the world, Summer, as a householder, a family. We call it the farm. Hey, I'd rather be a messy angel than cause so much tension inside myself. That kind of thing. Like, we need to keep circulating the love inside ourself for our immune system, for our well-being, for our family. But sometimes the small things matter. There's certain things we also have to be able to say, okay, I need to stand up for this. It's a dance for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Shifting gears to your global community and activism work, you've participated in pro-environmental and activism events. How do you see yoga contributing to global healing and ecological awareness?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's so much that's happening in the world. I just want to start with something very, very tangible, which is the question of who are the wisdom keepers of the land that we are currently, wherever we're living? Who was here before? And are they still here? And just that simple question, for me, where we live in a fire zone, so it's actually cheaper than living in, in the city. But, here in Malibu, it's called Malibu, the place where the ocean sounds loudly in Shumash. We live over a 6,000-year-old Chumash village, and the grandmothers are just here at an 8,000-year-old Chumash village in a place called Wishtoyo. And for me, that has been the center of my ecological, how should we say, journey of sacred activism, and that I've done, and I'm still protesting, and I've done that kind of the typical way we think of how we need to be engaged in the world. And I find that I can only sustain that work if I'm also deeply connected to sacred ecology, as in going around the fire, being supporting the Shumash elders and activists, Mati and Luhui Waya. They also do the work that's needed in terms of legal action to protect watersheds, to protect traditional lands, to protect our ocean. They have the rights, the legal rights to, and they've fought sometimes 10 years. They've done some amazing work. You can go to wishtoyo.org. And that's really been kind of how I center my environmental activism. And I've had a solar home, and I've been trying to plug in and drive the sun. It's been now 12 years. And so I really believe in, being plant-based in our nutrition as much as we can. I'm not a person, I think our personal, whatever we decide for our nutrition is everybody's, personal way, but I think leaning into plant-based nutrition is important, to just be able to say that. And meaning caring for all creatures, and that includes the war-torn places of the world. Just how much we're spending on the military is just disgusting, actually. Just trillions and trillions of dollars on destruction. We have everything. I think we just have to plant 8 billion trees, which is not that hard, and we would solve climate change,
I think we should definitely, there could be a whole second podcast on your environmental work, and just hearing you too, like the little things you have done in your life consistently, like living off solar power, driving a solar car, like the daily choices you make, and connecting with your local indigenous communities is really
Definitely.
powerful.
It's really it changes everything. You're not alone. You're part of a legacy of people who've been living in an interconnected way.
Yeah. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and there's a lot of local indigenous folks, and always trying to support them and go to their, events and create more awareness and teach with their yoga teacher training. So I'm right there with you, and just
That's
wanting
so
to learn
great.
from them. They're so wise. There's so much information and knowledge and embodiment
Definitely.
in the culture.
Definitely.
All right, so my final question, if you could offer one piece of guidance to both new practitioners and seasoned teachers about living yoga in the modern world, what would it be?
Well, it's that being yoga is more important than doing yoga. And that you actually already know yoga. But the yoga that you will learn will help you connect to the yoga that you already know. And that is, we started yoga from a very long yoga retreat in a very wonderful, perfect shala that was the womb, with the infusion of mantra that was our mother's heartbeat, and the love that we felt, from our environment already. We could sense that this is a very powerful life force that's moving us already from inside the womb. We're already experiencing that state of yoga. And it is unfortunate that as we're born on the journey of life, disembodiment, many, many confusing experiences happen. And it seems like we have to find and remember and come to that which is already naturally within us. And that's the beautiful journey of yoga. And at the same time, you will find through yoga practice that the power to keep growing, that there's so much to learn, and in that learning you keep growing and evolving. You're in an ocean of wisdom teaching, wisdom possibility. To be a practitioner is also to be start to grow on the tree of yoga ourselves. It's branching through us. This consciousness is branching through us. And so for me, that is the exciting aspect of the journey. It's a commitment to continue to evolve. It's a commitment to become as alive as possible with this life force energy and breath that's in every cell of our being. So we don't have to go far, and yet it's wonderful to be in community. I am forever learning. And I discovered in COVID that when the tree shakes, I'm still a teacher. Like I just love this journey of being a guide and setting the table for juicy movement nutrition. Oh,
Oh my gosh. I don't know why, but tears are coming. I maybe because we're closing our conversation, and I feel like just being in your presence and you sharing your story is going to inspire so many humans to continue to live yoga and find their center again. So thank you, Shiva.
oh, thank you, and thank you so much. I really wanted to leave the space for your questions, but really just thank you so much for all that you share in support of teachers in the world, and being a pioneer and bringing mace and yoga together and these flow arts. Just really thank you so much. I so appreciate what you're offering in the world, and I hope I can come over and
Oh, they're welcome.
play with the mace from the whole Hanuman. Can't wear our hats.
Absolutely. I definitely am curious, actually, for my own self and anybody that's listening, where is the best place to find your like live events, like your pilgrimage and your teacher training? Where can we find about your work and then also your socials? I'm sure people can find that, but at least the work.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say that I've been in a little bit of a long rebuild. I moved from Jupiter, now I'm in Saturn Desha in Jyotish, which is the slow foundation building. Oh, so good for patience. So just go to shivaray.love. Finally got that .love instead of the .com, but that works too. And we have a weekly shala where people can experience, a namaskar movement meditation. We do sacred training, which is, strength and stamina training, but from the perspective of the internal power of mantra and meditation, and also channeling your emotions and creative core work. So that's part of the weekly classes. And we have a teacher training that then follows that Wheel of the Year through, it's only at the 300-hour level online, but it's really so people can emphasize living and embodying yoga. Lots of rich reading, but it doesn't have a school environment. It has more of a kind of living together environment, no pressure, more emphasis on inspiration and embodiment. And then we do these pilgrimages to particularly to India. I'm sure there'll be a time where you can come. And that way I can introduce people. It's usually to study in Kalaripayat, you need a minimum of 3 months. So there's some special access things that have evolved all over the world, including in Greece, where we go in the summer. So those are our kind of main hubs is Asia and Europe, and in the United States, mainly here in California, Denver, on the East Coast some, time to get up to the Northwest. I just love our sacred earth summer, really. I like being together in a quantum way. I like being together live. I'm like one of those kids that never wanted to take a nap because I just find being alive just so amazing. And at the same time, wow, this is our time for healing. This is our time for wholeness. This is the time for the people to rise in our love and compassion and power.
Thank you so much, Shiva Ray. It's such an honor to have you here and blessing us with your presence.
Thank you so much. See you down the road.
Namaste, friend. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Aligned Impact. I'm truly grateful to have you here in this growing community of leaders, innovators, and conscious change makers. Check the show notes for all the links and resources we mentioned today, and you can explore more of my work and programs over at FlowShala.com or connect with me on social media at Summer Huntington and YouTube as well for behind the scenes, movement inspiration, and business tips. Stay tuned for more episodes of Aligned Impact that inspire you to lead with intention, get empowered, and create aligned impact in your life and your community.